Hello BookTube. Today I'm doing part 10 of my science fiction and fantasy library tour. As you can see, that's the shelf I just took down and cleaned it a bit too while I was at it. So since this shelf and the next two are going to be pretty long, I'm going to try to speed things up a little bit, but we'll see how it goes. Okay. So continuing on from yesterday's video, the first book today is another one by Guy Gavriel Kay. This is A Song for Arbonne. I picked this up, I want to say from the Friends of the Library book sale. No, Golden's Book Exchange. And I think I picked all but Lions of Al-Rassan from Golden's. The Lions of Al-Rassan I think I picked up from Brazos Books. Following A Song for Arbonne, I have Weird Tales, edited by Marvin Kay. Picked this up from Better World Books through Libris. It's an anthology, anthology of stories that appeared in Weird Tales, which was a one of the premier fantasy and science fiction magazines in the early 20th century that had, it kind of shuts down, it comes back, it shuts down again, and I think it's currently shut down. And there was a huge controversy a few years ago, about 10 years ago, about that. Anyway, next is The Promise of Space and Other Stories by James Patrick Kelly. I liked some of the stories in here and wasn't as impressed with others, but I do want to reread it in the coming new year. Next, I have Catherine Kerr's A Time of Omens, book 2 of the Westland Cycle. I think I picked this up from the Friends of the Library Booksell Alcove at the West Waco Library and Genealogy Center. Next, I have 3 books by Asma Zehanat Khan. These are the first 3 novels in the Khorasan archive. First, we have The Bloodprint, The Black Khan, which I will be reading starting today, and finally, The Blue Eye, which I will hopefully start in January. Let me readjust these. So next we have a bit of Stephen King. First we have Christine, which I picked up from the Friends of the Library Booksell Alcove. I largely picked this up because I'm quite fond of the film adaptation. I kind of have a crush on, the Arnie character. The actor in the film was quite attractive. Next, I have The Stand. And then I have a few books in the Dark Tower series. The Gunslinger, which I really like. The Drawing of the Three. In case I'm not, the Three. The Wastelands. And Wizard and Glass. So I picked up, I want to say I picked up The Gunslinger from Friends of the Library book sale, and the other 3 I picked up from Golden's Book Exchange. Next, I have 2 novels by Elise Kova, The Alchemist of Loom, and The Dragons of Nova. Excuse me. Next up, Nancy Kress, Tomorrow's Kin. The Still Crow Saga by Paul Kruger. I'm going to be reading this one hopefully in January, or if not then, maybe February or March, depending on my schedule. Next, I have Catherine Kurtz's Camber the Heretic, Volume 3 in the Legends of Camber of Coldey. This is a former library book from the Waco, McLennan County Library System. And next I have 2 books by Ursula K. Le Guin. The first is 5 complete novels. This includes The Left Hand of Darkness, Rocannon's World, Planet of Exile, City of Illusions, and The Word for World is Forest. Picked this up from the Friends of the Library book sale, and I quite enjoyed reading some of the stories in there. And I also have The Dispossessed by Ursula K. Le Guin, which I want to say I picked this up either from Golden's or the Friends of the Library book sale, one way or another. I actually read this, it's been years. I was a teaching assistant for a Introduction to Freshman Studies class, and one of the novels they covered was The Dispossessed. It was about technology. So next we have The Sky That Raps by Jay Lake. This is a short story collection of his short fiction. I'm quite fond of some of Jay Lake's work. I have 2 of his a short story of his appears in both what is it? The Steampunk Anthology, edited by the Vandermeers, and the New Weird Anthology, again edited by the Vandermeers, and I quite enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to finally reading this book. Next, another book by Jay Lake is Trial of Flowers, former library book. It's from Hamilton Public Library. And next we have A People's Future of the United States, an anthology that came out a few months ago at the start of the year, and it's basically taking off on the idea of Howard Zinn's People's History of the United States. And in this case, it's looking at science fiction writers positing usually dystopic visions of America's future. And some of the stories in here include so Charlie Jane Anders, A. Mark Grusted, Liz Huerta, Maria Davana Headley, Malka Older, Sam J. Miller, Tenerife Due, Ashok K. Banker, Omar El Akkad, Daniel Jose Older, Leslie Naneka Aram, Jessina Ireland, Violet Allen, Gabby Rivera, Tobias S. Buckle, Hugh Howey, Jimmy Ford, G. Willow Wilson, N.K. Jemison, Charles Yu, Kai Ching Tom, Daniel H. Wilson, Catherine M. Valenti, Shannon McGuire, and Alice Sola Kim. And I've read some of the stories in here, and I'm not entirely sure what I make of it. I definitely need to give this another go, and then I will report back. And well, not quite finally, but next we have Prince of Thorns by Mark Lawrence. Obviously, by the bookmark, I have been meaning to read this and I haven't gotten to it yet. I need to correct that soon, hopefully. So from Lawrence, we now go to quite a bit of Tanith Lee. First, I have The Secret Books of Paradise, the complete Paradise Cycle. Picked it up from the Friends of the Library book sale. Next, we have a book that I showed a few weeks ago. This is Tales from the Flat Earth, the Lords of Darkness. You know, I probably ought to read what books are in these anthologies or in omnibuses. So, the first book in the Secret Books of Paradise is the Book of the Damned with Stained Crimson, Malice and Saffron, Empires of Azure. The Book of the Beast, the Green Book, the Purple Book, the Green Book again. So I guess that's a single novel. And then the Book of the Dead and the Book of the Mad. So, haven't gotten to it yet, but I will soon-ish. And then Kenneth Lee's Tales from the Flat Earth, The Lords of Darkness has Night's Master, Death's Master, and Delusion's Master. And I want to say there's another omnibus that rounds out the series, because I think there's like 5 in that series. Next, I have her Unicorn series, I guess this is what it's called. Black Unicorn, Gold Unicorn, and Red Unicorn. And next I have the Birthgrave trilogy with the Birthgrave in a more recent mass market paperback. Kenneth Lee wrote mostly in like the 70s and 80s and early 90s, and then her career kind of fell off in like the late 2000s and 2010s. And around the time of her death, her publisher Daw decided to re-release much of her work in these new mass market editions. Going on from the Birthgrave, I also have Vazcor, Son of Vazcor, and Quest for the White Witch. And then I have another series of from her, The Stormlord, and Ekire, and The White Serpent. Most of those I picked, except for the Birthgrave, most of those I picked up from Goldens over like a year or so. And then I have Faces Underwater, which I'm pretty sure I picked up from Goldens eons ago, and A Heroine of the World. And I think it's one of my bookish goals is to collect all of Kenneth Lee. And finally, wrapping up this long shelf, I have the 3 novels in the Hexarchate series. Nine Fox Gambit, Raven Stratagem, and Revenant Gun, which I honestly love all 3 of these novels. They are fantastic. The science in the Hexarchate series is weird. It's sort of dependent on some kind of calendrical sort of science where adherence to specific calendars allow for exotic science, supernatural scientific effects to happen. So anyway, so that was part 10 of my library, of my science fiction and fantasy library. Next time.